Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. Welcome, everyone. After it's been about a week since I did my last live stream, I was planning on coming on here Sunday, but I just had no energy, like none whatsoever. Nothing bad. I've just started a new medication and I think that's really draining me and my body's just taking time to adjust. Nothing to worry about. Which means there's a lot of stuff for me to actually cover and go over. But let's see who's already in the sandbox. We have Looney Tunes 9000, Kelly Bach, and Monope. Hello, welcome. I'm always trying to find that sweet spot as to where I actually start my content versus, waiting for people to actually start watching. Because I don't want to get right into a story right away and then get halfway through it and then 15 people jump in and have no idea what I'm talking about. But not everyone's going to be terribly punctual, I think. But that's okay. So how is everyone doing? I got a new piece of furniture. You see, a lot of people don't understand how important it is to have at least one comfortable piece of furniture you can lounge in, which I did not have. I had an old wingback chair in my living area that the springs were kind of popping, like I could feel the springs in the back, so I had to put old pillows behind it, but it wasn't very comfortable and I couldn't really do much with my legs and stuff. But when you live on disability and in dire poverty, buying a piece of furniture that's actually comfortable, it's not necessarily a thing. Like the chair that I'm sitting in right now, it's fine enough. It's comfortable enough for what I'm doing, but it's not exactly what you go into to unwind. This is a work chair. So I was at one of the local malls and there was a thrift store in there. And I walked past a love seat, which is something I was looking for because I didn't want something too big. It was only $50. And it is so smushy, squishy, wonderful. I couldn't believe it. You have no idea how excited I was to find that. And I was able to get a friend to help me move it here. And I got it settled in. I just finished cleaning it up and everything. And it's so nice to have something that you can just lounge in that's comfortable. And part of the reason why I want a love seat as opposed to let's say a recliner is I still kind of hope that someday I have somebody over that I want to cuddle with. And this love seat is actually ideal for that because the seats on it are very wide. So two people can lie down on it if they're cuddling, which is really nice. And it's so squishy. My cats absolutely approve of it. They're all over it and they love when I'm on it and they can sit next to me and I snuggle with my cats without them being right on my lap and in my way, which is great. But for a lot of people, how difficult it is to just find a decent piece of furniture. And when you do, it's like, wow. And this one was manager special, only $50. The color is great, everything. It's in fairly decent condition. Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong with that. Anyway, I was super, well, I didn't get it to my place until yesterday, and there was a lot of anxiety in me until I got it. Just to make sure I got it, and there was a lot of anticipation, which actually was killing my mood a bit. Anyway, looks like we have somebody else pop in. Thisby. Welcome from Vancouver. Vancouver, Vancouver. I don't know the proper Canadian way of saying it necessarily. In Ontario, we just say Vancouver. But I think I've heard it pronounced slightly differently depending where you are. Anyway, I'm just kind of rambling. I do have a lot of news to actually cover. Because, like I said, I was off for a week. Part of it is I think I have a bit too much on my plate right now. I've contacted somebody I know who could at least point me in the right direction on what to do about my book next, like how to self-publish. And I think I need to make that a priority. So until that's kind of really set in motion, I have to cut back how many live streams I do regularly per week to officially 2. Because officially it was 3, but then I ended up doing 2 anyway. So I think I'm going to cut it back to 2 a week. So it'll be Wednesday and Sunday. I'll be doing my live streams until I can get things about my book in place. Because I need to get that published. It is an anchor that has been weighing me down. This book has been ready to be published for literally years, and it hasn't happened. I need to get this done. So between that and working on my video essay about Anna Kasparian, a lot of my time is taken. So I think as much as I want to, because I do enjoy this live streaming, I have to cut it back to 2 times a week officially. And then if something like really exciting happens during the week, then I can throw in another live stream. Nope, furniture is also very difficult to transport, even if you find it somewhere. Yeah, the thrift store has a delivery service, but it's an extra $60 and they just take it to your front door. So they wouldn't help me bring it up into my apartment or anything. But I have a friend with a large enough vehicle that we could get it in. And then I had a couple friends help moving it up in here. Luckily, it's not very heavy, but it's very awkward because it's, again, the seat of it is very wide. And so the cushions, like it's hard. It only has the 2 seat cushions, but it's very hard to move. But yes, it's so squishy, comfy. I could like nap in it if I wanted to. It's, yeah. Yes, it's a love seat that I got. And it's probably the end of a sectional actually, because like it's the size of a love seat and it has one side has an arm, but then there's no arm on the other side. I don't think I can send a picture. I don't think I did. I didn't tweet out a picture of it. But I do have a picture of it. Let's see if I can show you guys the picture of it on my phone. Let's see. There, I don't know if you guys can get a... I think that works. But then you can have your feet hang over the edge, or it's easier to get in and out of. But it is very low sitting and squishy, so if people have a hard time just like standing up and stuff, it could be a bit difficult. But I still have my older furniture for that, and it's not a problem for me, so. Looney Tunes, if Sandy cuts Sunday, that means I'm on Twitch modding duty all weekend. Well, I was hoping to keep Sundays. Just because most of the other political streamers I know don't do Sundays. So it makes it easier for me to cover stories that they're not necessarily covering at the time. Yes, Monope, it is super comfy and squishy, and yeah, the color is great. I hate ones that are like a cream color or white or something when you have cats and other stain related things like food and whatnot. Like it's just no. I want something a bit darker, so I like the red. Let's see. But I think we should actually get into, what people come to my channel for, and that is
Today in Canadian news.
okay, so we have here this little TikTok from Rachel Gilmore. She does wonderful Canadian content on, I imagine this is a TikTok, and on Twitter. So if you're still on Twitter, go follow her there, find her on other platforms. But she was bringing attention to a documentary that Radio Canada did, which was just horrid and has very Jesse Singal vibes to it. And it's a bit of an older video. She posted this March 1st, but it's been on my docket to share, and I really wanted to share it. And it's a good way to lead into the other kind of queer-related Canadian stories that I have.
Let's talk about an investigation that was published yesterday by Radio Canada, which has been slammed as beyond disappointing. Or as trans rights activist Faye Johnstone characterized it, what the fuck, CBC? The investigation looked into gender-affirming care for trans youth, but they didn't speak to anyone with a positive experience with transition until 40 minutes into the hour-long investigation, which is grossly misrepresentative of gender-affirming care's real regret rate.
That's pretty much what Jesse Singal was doing on his studies, where it's like, we're just going to hyper-focus on the select few people who, have some regret, but then we're also going to talk to their parents as opposed to the people who transitioned and all this sort of gross stuff to get like really biased takes and results in the report that he sent out that Anna Kasparian now uses as like text proof of what it is to transition or something. So it sounds like Radio Canada also did the same thing with their own study.
Associated Press looked at 27 studies on the matter and found that 99% of those who receive gender-affirming care do not have regrets. But Radio Canada speaks to 5 experts opposing gender-affirming care for youth, 3 parents with negative experiences, 2 teens with negative experiences, just 1 supportive expert, and 1 happy trans teen. They also make a big show of attending a conference in New York put on by this group, which is against gender-affirming care for youth. Of the 6 experts interviewed in the entire piece, 4 are from this. Here's what Celeste Trianon told me about this.
By further platforming anti-trans junk science, Radio Canada is granting a voice of authority to these bad faith actors who are attempting to erase us, to dehumanize us, to eliminate us from public life.
Junk science is right. They repeatedly platform this Swedish anti-trans activist who says that there's no evidence that providing gender-affirming care is beneficial for mental health. It's literally so easy to find a study proving him wrong. Radio Canada also had an actress pretend to be a 14-year-old seeking gender-affirming care. They sent her to a private clinic where she secretly filmed her conversation with a doctor, and she shared an extensive made-up backstory and was ultimately prescribed testosterone. But this is not the average experience with seeking out gender-affirming care in Canada, as CBC's own reporting has found. But Radio Canada ignores this kind of thing and repeatedly reiterates the idea that things are moving too fast and we need more caution. I mean, they literally call the segment Trans Express, which makes me wonder, what's the point of this? Because it really smacks of opportunistic moral panic at a time when the trans community really doesn't need that. Meanwhile, anti-trans organizations and people are thrilled about it. And the journalists responsible for the investigation are going on Quebec's biggest talk show on Sunday. So I guess all that's really left to say is, what the fuck, CBC? What do you think of all this?
Yeah, just everything you see happening down in the States eventually trickles up here. It is just so frustrating because all the trans people I know getting everything they need to actually start transitioning was not easy. Consistent, persistent, insistent. Or there's a 3-word phrase that one of them has told me about. And when she was transitioning, granted it was a while ago, she had to socially transition, and like she wasn't even allowed to accidentally slip up and misgender herself during this time, or else, oh, well, then you don't really mean it. And like all this sort of stuff. It is not easy. This doesn't just happen. You don't just walk in, generally speaking, tell a sob story and start getting prescribed hormones. That's not how it works. And so it's just so frustrating when you have these organizations that are very biased. They're going in with an agenda. So they're only looking for information that will support them. And they'll cherry pick, or in some cases, just make it up completely, while completely ignoring the mountains of evidence that prove the opposite. That the vast, vast, vast majority of people who transition do not regret it. However, I do know a lot of people who were never given the chance to transition who do regret it. Especially all the trans people I know regret not being able to do it through puberty. And so they had puberty that didn't match their gender. And those are permanent changes to their body that's going to be with them for the rest of their lives. That, you know, only like so much hormones can do about it. If they can afford surgeries to maybe feminize themselves, give them more feminine features, but not everyone has access to that sort of care in Canada. So it is just so frustrating. But then we also get things like this. Where's the media coverage on this, says Faye Johnstone. Where are expressions of concern and solidarity from politicians of all stripes? Always forget to make this bigger when I switch over to doing the live stream. Apparently, we're getting bomb threats here in Canada for drag show events, storytime drag shows. A statement from Rainbow Collective, Thunder Pride, and Wiggins Productions on the bomb threat made on Saturday, March 16th towards story time with T-Bay drag queens at the Thunder Bay Public Library. Let's do it. Actually, was it bigger the other way? I think it's actually bigger this way. Storytime with Drag Queens is an essential initiative that promotes diversity, inclusivity, and acceptance in society. By bringing drag queens into libraries to read stories to children, Storytime with Drag Queens fosters a sense of understanding and celebrates differences of all kinds. These events acquaint children with various identities and help break down age-old but persistent stereotypes from a young age. Moreover, Storytime with Drag Queens serves as a platform for LGBTQIA+ individuals to share their stories and struggles, empowering both children and adults to embrace authenticity and individually in themselves and others. Attacking Storytime with Drag Queens with a bomb threat not only undermines the safety of the participants and attendees, but also aims to instill fear and division within the community. This reprehensible act not only disrupts the event, but also sends a chilling message that spaces of inclusion and celebration can be threatened, discouraging individuals from participating in similar initiatives and in the future. Ultimately, such attacks reinforce the importance of standing united against bigotry and violence, and continuing to support events like Storytime with Drag Queens as a beacon of acceptance and understanding. We can go on to, you can always check out the rest of the statement. It is a fairly long statement. I'll just skip down to the bottom. We refuse to let fear and intimidation deter us. A new generation of activists inspired by the bravery of those who came before us will prevail. Together, we will overcome adversity and pave the way for a brighter, more inclusive future. So what is it that the right is always talking about, keeping children safe, bomb threats don't keep children safe. And it does intimidate children to think that, they were just going to go to have a fun little story read to them, and suddenly they can't because the venue's being closed by a bomb threat. Like, could you imagine being a child thinking that the event that you were so excited to go to is being shut down because of something like that? Now, I know, like, last year during Pride in June, I went to some of the Pride events in my area, and even then, I was still worried because the increased hostility is really starting to, I'm worried something big will happen, a big attack will happen. And then in my area, we did have an attack at the University of Waterloo with the stabbing. Fortunately, nobody died in it, but 3 people were very drastically injured, and the entire class was traumatized by what had happened. And that person was specifically targeting gender studies, people like me. And I'm worried that it's just the rhetoric that we see out in public with the right wing, the way they're amplifying it, the way that they're dismissing it. You know, you have social media like Twitter, which is just completely embracing it. It's going to make things more dangerous, and well, that's the point. That's what they want. And so it's important that we keep on fighting back and we keep on pushing forward. But here is an actual article on this. So this wasn't covered by national news. You know, you have local news like Thunder Bay, CBC covered it. But getting this like on the national stage to get Canadians aware that this happened, then really, it wasn't really a thing. So as with most stories and stuff that I cover, most of them you can find online if you search for them. But important stories like, I don't know, a Tiki Torch March in Alberta that is full of racism and is a send-off of was inspired by Charlottesville and stuff of that sort. That wasn't national news. You had to find the articles. Like if you knew to look for it, you could find them. And it's the same as this. Like, where are the news stories about it? Nationally, not just locally. Community provides supports after bomb threat at Thunder Bay Drag Queen Storytime event. Police continue to investigate after no credible threat was found. People are rallying around Thunder Bay's LGBTQ plus community after a bomb threat was made against Drag Queen Storytime event was scheduled to happen over the weekend. Thunder Bay Public Library received the threat on Saturday ahead of Storytime with Thunder Bay Drag Queens event planned for later that day. The event was canceled and the facility was closed for the rest of the day as a precaution. The Thunder Bay Police Service says no credible threat was found, but an investigation remains ongoing. Incidents like this are significant draw on the police resources and are disruptive and disparaging to many community members, says a statement from the TBPS issued Monday afternoon. While people have the right to voice their or demonstrate their views that oppose inclusivity initiatives, those who choose to break the law are subject to criminal charges. Thunder Bay threat comes amid rising anti-LGBTQ sentiment in Canada over the past few years. Statistics Canada most recent report on hate crime says that 2022 marked an all-time high for police-reported hate crimes motivated by sexual orientation with 491 cases. That's a 12% rise from the previous all-time high in 2021. The purpose of the Storytime events is to educate children and families about diversity while celebrating people's differences in a safe, inclusive space, according to the organizers. Attacking Storytime with drag queens with a bomb threat not only undermines the safety of the participants and attendees, but also aims to instill fear and division within the community, says a joint statement that we had just gone over. Storytime with Thunder Bay Drag Queens will return in April, but continues on and continue on a monthly basis for the foreseeable future, says the library. The Thunder Bay Public Library is open to all, and proudly so. We stand in solidarity with Thunder Bay's 2S LGBTQIA+ community and are committed to continuing to present inclusive storytime, says Tina Monrose, Director of Communities with the Thunder Bay Public Library media release Monday. We encourage everyone to attend and participate in the equity, diversity, inclusivity storytime with Thunder Bay Drag Queens. Yeah, it is. You know, what kind of dark soul do you have to see an event like this and immediately think it's sexualizing children? It's making them gay or trans or something of that sort. To see a drag queen flamboyantly dressed up, playful, almost like a character from a fairy tale, telling a fun story to children to make them smile and laugh and all that sort of stuff. It's a performance. And to look at that, to look at children smiling, happy, feeling included, not feeling shy about who they are. To look at that and think, you know what, I need to shut that down with a bomb threat. What does that say about where the society is going? It is so frustrating that we constantly have to deal with these, and then the comments that you get on these stories of people just saying they're all groomers and perverts and things of that sort. When in actuality, this sort of thing has been going on for years and years and years. It just, now suddenly it's a big deal. Now suddenly it's an issue to have this. I don't see this outrage over a pantomime or performance or other theater performances, but specifically for this, for an event that people choose to go to, parents choose to bring the children to. It's not forced indoctrination. It's not being forced on people. This is a choice. And our choices are being taken away by these hateful, bigoted people. And these people have a fair bit of influence and power. So again, from Rachel Gilmore, she was mentioning she takes a week off of work, and the Alberta Premier's main brains, SAD, starts posting hate crimes. Can we take this seriously, please? David Parker posted this on Twitter, and of course there's no issue with posting this sort of image on Twitter. None. The only thing on Twitter you can't do is use the word cis. All other racial slurs and stuff like that, totally fine. But if you call someone cis, you get your account banned. It is just such hyper snowflake runs that social network. And I am so looking forward to the day that he completely melts. That somebody just takes a blowtorch to him and melts him away, because I can't imagine his investors are too thrilled with him. Like, I only hope that someday soon somebody is going to take the reins of power away from him when it comes to Twitter, and hopefully have some common sense and start trying to work it back to where it was. But a little bit more on who this David Parker guy is. He is the founder of Take Back Alberta. Now, judging by that title, you might not be thinking like, I wonder which political leaning he might have. Yeah, he's a right-winger, and that was a political party in Alberta that has a lot of issues and is under investigation and stuff about how it was raising money and all that sort of stuff, of course. So here he has, let's see if I can make this bigger for people to see. So here we have a subheader here that really should use some more spaces, because that looks like one word, who we are. Founded by David Parker in 2022, Take Back Alberta, TBA, so to be announced, is always how I read that, is a grassroots movement built to advance freedoms and transfer power from the ruling elite to the people of our province. TBA is supported by a vast grassroots volunteer network of freedom-loving Albertans from all walks of life. From all walks of white, cis, heterosexual life. You can be old and white. You can be young and white. TBA made national headlines when it successfully led the fight to remove Premier Jason Kennedy from power after his government imposed the harshest, most restrictive assault on freedom in our province's history. Right. The Conservative Party of Alberta was not right-wing enough for these guys. And so they led a movement to get him out of power. Now TBA has set sights on empowering Albertans to be proactive and engage in all levels of government. History is written by those who show up. No, it's not. That's not how it works. But here we have from the T, which is a good magazine, news magazine here in Canada. Take Back Alberta embraces increasing extremism. David Parker threatens Alberta Health Services over its evil communist ideology. Oh, if only that was an actual thing here in Canada. David Parker, executive director of the Take Back Alberta faction of the United Conservative Party, was tweeting about Alberta Health Services' new enhanced masking directive first thing Thursday morning, the day the provincial health authorities week buck passing response to resurgence of COVID-19 in Alberta hospitals. So this article is from a little while ago, October of last year. The fact that AHS is trying to push them again shows that a hostile and communist ideology has taken over our healthcare system and is defying the democratic will of the people, concluded the man who boasts he is a black belt in political organizing. That's a thing. That is definitely a thing. I have a black belt in political organizing. They always try to make themselves sound tougher than they actually are, or more skilled and all that sort of stuff, when, you know, a strong breeze can knock them over type thing. But yeah, getting upset with the whole communist mask mandates that wasn't a thing. They must be removed from any decision-making roles, his mini rant concluded. On Friday morning, he returned to the same theme in the same venue. Dear leadership of Alberta Health Services, he tweeted, we are coming for you and we will not rest until your evil communist ideology is eradicated from the face of this province. Sincerely, Take Back Alberta. Parker sounds like a nut. It should just be a period there, I think. Parker sounds like a nut. But he has to be taken seriously because supporters of the insurgent group he founded occupy 9 of the 18 seats on the UCP's board of directors. As is well known, Take Back Alberta aims to grab the rest of the party's annual general meeting in Calgary on November 3rd and 4th, which it did not. And again, there's issues in investigations into how they funded this stuff, but needless to say, we're getting little parties like this popping up all over the place. And what the right tends to do when you have these more extremist little groups pop up is, instead of just letting them die out, they often consolidate. So what that does is it drags the Conservative Party, generally speaking, a little bit more right-wing. So there is a right-wing People Party in Canada right now. And I think the instant it starts actually getting seats on the federal level and becoming like a real threat, it won't be long before they end up merging. Like it was a splinter from the Conservative Party because, again, the Conservative Party wasn't right-wing enough for them. But it won't be long before they consolidate again. And they're really good at doing that. Whereas on the left, there's lots of little leftist parties here, there, and everywhere, but they have a really hard time getting along and consolidating. Like, even if you look at the NDP and the Liberal Party, not exactly left-wing, but left-ish on a lot of things, they have a hard time working together to get things done that people actually want because of political points. The Liberals don't want to admit that it was the NDP that pushed them that way, and the NDP wants to take credit for things that they never did, and all this sort of, it's political games. That's all it is. We don't have a democracy. It's just a political game. It's just a job. It's a career for the people who are in it. You know, they're not looking to make the lives of Canadians better. They're just looking to win. And when that happens, it's the people who lose. And we need to, I'm fed up with the government, with how it's run, with how much the people allow to happen. We need a complete overhaul of how things are done. We don't have a real democracy here in Canada because rarely ever does the person with the popular vote ever end up as the party with the most amount of seats. Because generally speaking, because of the party system, we don't have any one person winning the popular vote. So then you get a coalition like you do with the NDP and the Liberals right now, but nothing gets done. It's always pushed aside, pushed off, promises for the next election, like, oh, but if we do everything the people want now, then we have nothing to hold above them come the next election. So then how on earth are we going to be elected? As opposed to people saying, you know what, you did so much for us last time, we're going to elect you again to make sure we keep that. They never look at it that way. It's always about like, what can we not give the people that we promise so that we can promise it next time in hopes that it wins them over yet again? So frustrating. But the Take Back Alberta isn't the only kind of right-wingers that we have in the political system right now. From Erica, can somebody explain to me why sitting MP and MPP are in a space hosted by a far-right Polish misinformation outlet? Yes, I featured Melissa Lancement in a different one. Conservative part of the leopards will eventually eat her face contingent. But we have people who are not afraid to go on right-wing fascist type shows while still being part of the political system, like Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, goes on stage with Tucker Carlson while he talks replacement theory and doesn't bat an eye. And in fact, as we'll get to kind of bring it back around, she actually asked him to target one of her political rivals. It's just... because then you get into things like this. For some reason, I've been having issues with my internet, so this video will not play. Something about updates just happened. I'm really wary right now because I can't record this stream as I'm live streaming it, so I don't have a backup if for some reason it doesn't save, which always puts me on edge because I just had to update my OBS and one of the drivers didn't update. Love technology. Anyway, anti-authority narratives could tear fabric of society, Intelligent Reports warns. So anti-authority could tear the fabric of society. Then does that mean the fabric of society is made of an authoritarian narrative? Is that how that works? Threats against politicians have become increasingly normalized due to extremist narratives prompted by personal grievances and fueled by misinformation or deliberate lies, warns a newly released intelligence report. The report, prepared by a federal task force that aims to safeguard elections, says the Canadian violent extremist landscape has seen the proliferation of conspiracy theories and a growing lack of trust in the integrity of the state and more political polarization. And that's, again, get back to the whole Danielle Smith and asking Tucker Carlson to target her political rivals. Yeah. I wonder where this polarization is coming from. It's not coming from the left. These conspiracy theories, lack of trust, all this sort of stuff, the hatred being stoked up and stirred up, that's not coming from the left. Partly because it's non-existent in this country. We don't have a political left, but, you don't see Justin Trudeau trying to stir up the same level of hate. Like, he doesn't... He plays the party lines. He doesn't try to stir up hate. But so often with Pierre Poilievre, with conservative leaders across the country on provincial levels, they are spreading conspiracy theories. They are spreading hate. Pierre Poilievre wants to make it so trans women can't participate on sports or go use the locker room and, start blocking access to gender-affirming care. Like, that's becoming a far more real threat here in Canada. Because I've mentioned it before, the likelihood of him being able to enact any policy is very slim given the nature of how our political system works. But it feeds into this environment that this study is warning about, with this polarization. and the threats of, what's happening to other leaders, to political parties, to people who are partisan. It all kind of entwines in together. Violent rhetoric routinely fixates on the elected officials with particular hostility towards high-profile women. Not shocking. The Canadian press used the Access to Information Act to obtain June 2023 report by the Security Intelligence Threats to Elections Task Force. Some passages in the secret Canadian eyes-only assessment were considered to be too sensitive to release. The federal body, established in 2019 to protect the electoral process from foreign interference, sorry, there's been a lot of talk about Russian foreign interference in our elections recently, includes representatives from the Canadian Security Intelligence Services, that's CSIS, the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the R, surprisingly not standing for racist, Global Affairs Canada, and Communication Security Establishment Canada's Cyber Spy Agency. Yes, we have spy networks here in Canada. They probably know a whole lot about me. Being an outspoken lefty political commentator, I doubt much of my information is all that private. But, yeah. Or if people go to protests and rallies and all that sort of stuff with your phone these days, the government, the certain watch lists might have your name. The report notes that while domestic terrorism threats are not strictly part of the task force focus on foreign meddling, we recognize the need to provide assessments on the issue. The task force weighed the possible threat from violent extremism driven by politics, religion, and ideology. It concluded that the three Canadian federal election. Am I reading that sentence right? It concluded that of the three, a Canadian federal election would most likely be impacted by ideological motivated violent extremism. Yeah, so that ideological, the whole anti-queer, anti-trans, the whole replacement theory conspiracy, that sort of ideology. Yeah. That's most likely where we'll see the extremism. Again, not shocking. There is no one-size-fits-all worldview for ideological extremists, the report says. Rather, threat actors are driven by a range of grievances, ideas, and highly personalized narratives from across traditional left to right-wing spectrum. I wouldn't say so much the left to right-wing. It's more across the traditional right-wing spectrum. Because again, the threats, well, there's a one-off case every now and then, the trend is far more the threats are coming from the right wing. That's where the attacks are coming from. That's where the threats are coming from. It's not a left-wing group shutting down storytime drag shows. That's not left-wing that's doing that. Often deeply influenced by conspiracy theories. Grievances may be fueled by elements including xenophobia, gender-related issues, or general anti-government sentiment. It says while threats against politicians peak during election cycles or major political announcements, RCMP information shows that monthly and annual averages have remained relatively stable since September 2021. Ideological motivated violent extremists have increasingly normalized threats against prominent figures outside of the election cycle, the report concludes. So now not only during election cycles, but just regular times, people such as Sarah Jama get targeted by these violent ideological motivated extremists. More and more, they're getting threats to their workplace, threats to their personal life. I'm not a fan. I'm a fan of protesting political figures, even outside their homes in some cases. I'm not necessarily against that if they refuse to listen to you anywhere else. If they're out to dinner, you can protest them. I'm not keen on threatening them That crosses a line for me. I don't want to see any of them hurt. I don't care how right-wing the politicians might be. I don't want to see them hurt. I want to see them step down. That's for sure. But I don't want to see any violence enacted towards them. But it's to be, not a cis male in politics right now. It's getting more and more dangerous to hold that type of job. And then people wonder why there aren't so many women or non-binary or visibly queer people stepping up to plate to get into politics. It's because you have to take into consideration, can you handle the threats? Not just towards yourself, but also towards your family. Can you put your family through that? Can you put your friends, your community through that? Should you choose to step up to get into the political sphere? Or do you just stick with activism where it's a little bit more safe? Not completely, but a little bit more safe. Which just leads to fewer and fewer, less and less representation within the political body. And we need more representation there. But not enough is being done to keep the people there safe. All threats to the Prime Minister and other parliamentarians reported to the RCMP are triaged and assessed for a link to national security, the task force adds. About 20% of reported threats to the Prime Minister and 13% of those against parliamentarians between September 2021 and mid-2023 met the RCMP's national security threshold. While extremist narratives and conspiracy theories do not usually manifest themselves as an act of serious violence, they have the potential to negatively affect the fabric of Canadian society, the report says. The RCMP did not respond to a request for comment in time for publication. CSIS spokesman Eric Balsman said the 2023 assessment remains unchanged. CSIS director David David told House Common Committee this month the spy service is devoting about half of its counterterrorism resources to investigate the threats of ideological motivated violent extremism. We've seen a number of threat vectors increasing, he said. The task force report says anti-authority extremists have almost certainly leveraged social media posts about foreign interference in Canada elections to reinforce pre-existing narratives around the inherent corruption of government institutions in Canada. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this lack of faith in the system started with COVID and the anti-vaxxers and the anti-maskers saying that it was the government cracking down on people, the government using authoritarian power to get its way. And all the safeguards that Canada put in place, it saved lives. If you go per capita between Canada and the United States, far fewer people died in Canada than in the United States. And part of that is our healthcare system in general is better than in the United States. But also, we did have a stronger push from politicians to wear masks, to have mandates, to have people stay at home, put in safeguards for that. But from people in the right wing, that was seen as authoritarian, when that is actually what the government should be doing. That's their job, to keep the citizens safe. And a lot of people have just been festering since, and then there's talk of Russian interference in our election and stuff, and that's just feeding into the frenzy. And then with Pierre Poilievre and other conservative leaders now starting to stoke the fuel of the anti-trans threat and all that sort of stuff, it's hard not to worry about what will happen, because we have had extremist attacks in Canada. It's not like it doesn't happen here. It happens plenty. Fortunately, nowhere near the scale as it happens in the United States, but it only takes one radicalized person with access to weapons to harm so many people. And it's impossible to protect every venue all the time. It is, yeah. So to continue on with the article, however, a narrative on the scale of stolen election rhetoric that prompted the January 6, 2021 breach in the U.S. Capitol has not emerged in the Canadian political landscape, the report notes. On the question of foreign interference, a broader companion report says that that as of last June, the task force has seen no evidence of significant cyber threat to Canadian electoral process or election infrastructure from the state actors. Political parties, candidates, and their staff continue to be targeted by cyber threat activity, however, and this may take the form of online espionage, disinformation, or fabricated videos known as deepfakes, the report adds. Overall, the task force says sophisticated, pervasive, and persistent meddling efforts can constitute a serious threat to Canada's national security and integrity of its democratic institutions. For certain foreign states and foreign interference activities are part of their normal patterns of behavior in Canada and often peak during election periods. Such interference, given its clandestine or deceptive nature, often takes place in a legal gray zone where there are no laws regulating the activities or where interpretation of them is ambiguous, the report adds. Canada is a highly priority foreign interference target due to its role in key global alliances and bodies, enjoying a robust international reputation. Ooh, I don't think people like Canada as much as they seem to think we are. Like, but I guess it depends on who you ask. Because I mentioned it before, Canada is responsible for a lot of atrocities happening around the world right now when it comes to mining corporations. Also, we have our stance with what's happening in Gaza and our lack of action there. I don't think our reputation is as golden as they like to think it is, but we do have some influence within some of the wealthier countries, but really we just fall in line with whatever the United States is doing. I have a hard time believing we have any influence that can be used or co-opted to help legitimize foreign state interests. I don't think we're as important as CSIS likes to think we are. In addition, Canada's advanced knowledge-based economy is attractive to foreign states seeking to develop their own scientific and technological expertise, the report says. Finally, Canada is home to a large diaspora community, which some foreign states try to monitor, control, or use further their own strategic goals. Foreign state development, important relationships in Canada year-round to further their own political platforms, and will use these relationships to advance, notably around election time. Well, I'm almost done, so we might as well just finish the article. Under a federal protocol, the heads of key national security agencies would inform a special panel of senior bureaucrats and interference attempts during an election period. Actually, I don't think we need to know this part here. Well, the article is available for anyone who wants to read the full thing. An initial report of findings from the Commission is due May 3rd. The inquiry will then shift to broader policy issues looking at the ability of the government to detect, deter, and counter foreign interference targeting Canada's democratic process. A final report is expected by the end of the year. Get the feeling the biggest threat to our process are already within the system. People such as Pierre Poilievre, who still I don't think has national security clearance. For reasons. It's just, I have no faith in our government to do what is needed to be done these days. Just, they're not governing for the people, it's for the corporations and the wealthy few. And I just get so fed up that people living with poverty, people living with disabilities, people in need of health care, we're just treated as pawns in this, you know. Constantly promising us the same thing over and over and over again in hopes to get us out to vote for them, yet never actually following through with it and breaking promises. As they say, the Liberals are very good at promising promises and announcing announcements. Anyway, let's check the Sandbox. Welcome, everyone. It looks like we've had a bump in the people. Come jump in. Kelly Bach, they demonize supportive parents too. That's what happens when you start shutting down drag time story time. Drag time story time. Story time drag queen time store stuff. There's an order those words should be in that that my dyslexia is really messing up on me right now. Yeah, it's something that parents choose to take their children to, and quite often it's to support them. You know, if their child is having any indications of being queer or doesn't quite fit in, or they just want a good time, you know, they just want to have fun. Or maybe the parents are queer and they want to bring their child to an inclusive event where they don't feel like they're being singled out. It's, yeah. Grand Theft Autobot. I remember once finding a couch on the curb and there was a note attached to it, so my curiosity got the better of me. I needed to see what it said. It said, "Beware, bed bugs." Ugh. Yeah, that is something that you have to worry about with curb furniture, is that there might be things in it that you have to worry about. The thrift the thrift store I got my love seat at, it's, you know, they check the furniture. You know, it's not just from the curb. They check it. It wasn't clean, like it was dusty. It had like a dusty smell to it, so I had to clean it that way. But it wasn't infested with anything. But there's a fair bit of furniture I've gotten from the curb. Oh. Grand Theft Autobot, I swear I jumped back 30 feet. Yeah, as soon as you see something about bugs, it's like, okay, I'm out of here. Because that is nightmare fuel, that type of infestation. Looney Tunes 9000, whose fucking bright idea was thinking it was a good idea to bomb people all over a drag show. Yeah. Fortunately, it was proved to be, you know, just a threat. There was no credibility, like there was no likelihood that it was going to enact, but you know, the threat, it does its part. It scares people, it intimidates people, it's part of the stochastic terrorism, and you never know when it's going to be that person that's unhinged enough to actually follow through with it. You never know. And that's why they have to at least investigate them, no matter how unlikely it is to follow through. Let's see. Oops. Grand Theft Autobot, when I went grocery shopping, there was more people wearing masks than not. Stores put down markers every 6 feet for the line to checkout, and nobody that I saw complained. I think that was once upon a time. Although waiting in line for a while did tax patience. Yeah, whenever I go out these days, I don't see people wearing masks. I'm usually the only one. Well, there'll be occasional people, but there was an event I went to recently that had about 100 people at it, and I was the only one with a mask. And I was the only one with a mask on the transit there and stuff. Hello, MIDI doctors. Welcome to the Sandbox. Nice to see you out. Hello, Hivesai. Hivesai says we just launched a trans news channel. Things are going well. Hit our first 100 subs. Oh, congratulations. Exciting stuff. Lots of news to cover in that category, that's for sure. Wish it was more positive, but people need to know. People need to be made aware of what's going on, what's happening. Both this side of the border, the state side of the border, in the UK, like it's happening all over the place. So for those of you who have been coming in a little bit later, I just want to let people know that I'm going to be doing my official live streams only twice a week now until I get caught up on some stuff. So it'll be Wednesdays and Sundays. Unless something like super big and exciting happens in between that I'm like, I need to get on live stream now. And it's just, I'm risking burnout, I think. There's some things that I need to get done. I'm working on getting my book published. I reached out to somebody I know, and they've given me some really good pointers on what I can do next to get it published, self-publishing. But it's a lot of work, and it's overwhelming at times, just thinking about everything that needs to get done, and then the video essays I want to work on and everything. So I think I just need to not try to overdo it with the live streams, although I do like doing it 3 times a week. But I think it's just a bit much for me right now. And I haven't really been doing it 3 times a week anyway. So it'll be more regularly Wednesdays and Sundays. Let's see. What shall we get to next? Lots of healthcare news to get to. Yeah, I think the healthcare news and the Doug Ford news are the main things that I wanted to get to today. So there's healthcare news from across the country. And just because I like it, I'm going to do this again.
Today in Canadian news.
Yes, today in Canadian healthcare news, price tag for rescuing Alberta's privatized lab services become clearer. Moving back to a public system will cost $97 million, budget numbers show. Yes, the cost of privatizing things just seems to always go up and up and up. Alberta's failed attempt to privatize lab services was an expensive and unnecessary lesson for the government, critics say, as the price tag becomes increasingly clear. So money wasted trying to privatize something that could have been used to actually help their public healthcare system. Wonderful. And the public healthcare system in Alberta, I think it's worse than Ontario for the moment. Ontario is doing everything it can to be the worst. It's working on it. But I think Alberta is still in the worst situation right now. So much of our taxpayer money is not being used appropriately. Again, this is part of the reason why I'm like, the entire government just needs an overhaul. Because they're not spending the money, the tax money, the way that they're supposed to, the way that they promise. And it ends up just hurting people in the long run. Numbers in Alberta recent budget shows the cost to buy out the Dillon Life operations was $31.5 million, and the government says it assumed liabilities are pegged to another $65.5 million. So something that people need to be cautious about, and why we need to fight even harder right now, is once something becomes privatized, to reverse it becomes really difficult and expensive, because then they can sue for lost profits and all this sort of bullshit stuff. So it's important to make sure it doesn't get privatized in the first place. Looking at you, Ontario, Doug Ford. Wait times ballooned last year after Alberta Health Services, AHS, expanded its contract with Dillon Life? I don't know. To include community lab services in Calgary and many other parts of the province that weren't already handled by the company. The province ultimately reversed course on the privatization plan. A deal was struck to transfer all the private provider staff and operation to the province to Alberta Precision Laboratories, which is owned by AHS. It's the public picking up the pieces of failed privatization projects, said Chris Galloway, executive director of Friends of Medicare. It didn't work. It made the whole lab system work less efficiently, made the experience of patients worse. It made the experience of workers worse. This was a nightmare, says Dr. John Meddings, a professor and past dean of medicine in the University of Calgary. He was personally affected by the backlogs after lab services transitioned to Dillon life. His wife, who has a malignancy, required careful follow-up and had to travel outside of Calgary to get timely appointments. She was utterly unable to get lab tests done, so we left town to get things done. Not everyone would have the ability to do that. Like, that's the thing. That's when class and privilege start taking place, where only if you have the resources, only if you have the means, can you actually get the health care you need in a timely manner. I'm in a situation now where I'm needing a lot of health care. My body is just falling apart for reasons. And the wait times for some of this appointments with specialists and stuff, it's scary. Because you go in and they say, oh, we find something, and it could be this, and this, and, you know, of course, some of it is worst case scenario, and we're telling you that. It doesn't mean that it's even remotely chances of that, but this could be the worst case scenario. And then you're sent off home, and it's like, well, your doctor should get to you in a week about doing tests to follow up that you should then get in another week or two, and then after that, you can maybe book an appointment with a specialist. But in the meantime, if you start suffering this, and this symptoms, get yourself to emerge because you could die. So, you know, you kind of want the test results done faster so you don't have to worry about it. And so when you have things like this, like if you don't have a car, if you don't have transportation, some tests are now out of pocket, aren't covered by an ODSP or your provincial health plans anymore. And it's becoming scarier, and we'll get to how dire it is becoming in this country. According to Meddings, the province's struggling healthcare system could have put the $97 million to better use. It's an unnecessary expense. How many nurses have we forgone for that? Lauren Hardcastle, who teaches health law and policy at the University of Calgary, called it an expensive lesson for the government. It's a big number, and one that could have been avoided with some foresight. A lot of people were sounding the alarms on this transition, she said, noting labs are not an ancillary service such as laundry or food service. Get the point. Again, people can go to this to read the whole article if you like. It's just... I'll just skip down to the bottom here. The Office of the Auditor General says examination of the contract with Dillon Life continues, but it has experienced delays getting interviews and information from AHS. It is unclear when the work will be done. Meanwhile, the Alberta government said it's continued to work to improve lab service in the province. This change has been an important step to improve and grow lab services and make sure Albertans have reliable and speedy lab testing of their own communities, said Andrea Smith, press secretary, blah, blah, blah. According to the ministry, the number of weekly appointments in Calgary increased 40% between May and December of last year. Wouldn't surprise me if COVID had something to do with that. A lot of people suffering long COVID, trying to figure out what's... all of a sudden they're fatigued or things seem off in their body and blah, blah, blah. And they want to go for this test and that test. And Canada isn't doing what it needs to deal with the increase of people suffering from long COVID. Next, we have program helping Northern Ontario ERs stay open set to expire. So, in Ontario, something that we've been running into a lot of problems with are ERs, especially in northern and rural communities, just shutting down. So if you need to go to the emergency room, emerge, suddenly you might have to travel hours to get to one because the one closest to you is just, there's no one there. You know, either travel hours or go back during, during work time hours next week or something. And the thing is that it's hard to get doctors and staff out to these rural communities because there's not much there to offer them. Sometimes the communities are very small. There's not much in the way of infrastructure. They're hard to reach. They're out in the middle of nowhere. So, it's important to provide people with everything they need to survive and thrive, to help incentivize them to go to these more remote areas. A program that helps rural and northern Ontario hospitals avoid temporary ER closures is set to expire at the end of the month, with no signal from the government as to whether it will be extended, made permanent, or simply end. Many of the province's more isolated hospitals rely on doctors from urban areas filling shifts on what is known as locum basis, and temporary locum program pays the premium as an incentive. I don't know if I'm saying this right, but we'll go with it. Rural and northern hospitals have said the program helped them keep their emergency department doors open as they struggle with shortages of local doctors, but its future is uncertain after the current expiry date of March 31st. We're getting dangerously close to that April 1st when we'll be without that incentive for locums, said Tim Vine, CEO of North Shore Health Network, which has 3 sites between Sault Ste. Marie and Sudbury. So we wait with great anticipation and hope that it will be continued. So many of our programs, our publicly funded programs, are like that. There's no consistency, there's no security. So programs that people can end up relying on, thinking that they can go to, it's just constantly anxiety driven as to whether or not it will be there come next month, come the renewal. And it's so frustrating because how do you budget? How do you anticipate? How do you make plans around it? How do you schedule? How do you build a life around things that might not be there but are so desperately needed? Let's just skip down to NDP health critic France Gillens said the government needs to come up with a permanent solution instead of constantly renewing the program on a temporary basis at the last minute. I don't know why they keep doing this, she said. There are no Uber physicians who are just waiting on the phones to ring so they can go up north. That doesn't exist. I mean, they book their locums a long time in advance. The province has noted that other ways it assists those hospitals include another emergency locum programs, reimbursing expenses for medical residents when on clinical assignments to northern ERs, and a virtual peer-to-peer program for rural and remote ER doctors. That other emergency locum programs is meant as a backup, said Melanie Goulet, recruitment and coordinator for health professionals at Notre Dame Hospital in Hearst, Ontario. Having something like that in temporary locum program in place permanently would be helpful, she said. It would be nice to know we have this program and we're not always scared. Are we going to have it next month? She said. Yeah. I can't imagine what it's like to live in these communities where it's like, if an emergency happens, you have to check to see if your ER is even open before you can go. And again, it's just constant anxiety, constant wondering if this is going to happen, what you're going to do. We're becoming more and more like the States all the time because I can't imagine what it's like living in the States, knowing that if you have a medical emergency, for a lot of people, they can't get seen because they don't have the insurance. And they can't afford it. And they can't be put in the position of being in medical debt for the rest of their lives. Because the tests and stuff that I need, the specialists I need, it's taking a while. True. It's not costing me anything, at least not yet. One of them might be, because it's only limitedly covered for certain things. But there's been so many times I've had to go to the hospital where if I had to pay or go into debt for it, I wouldn't have gone. And any one of those times, had I not gone, there's a chance, that I wouldn't be here. As much as I gripe about our healthcare system, it has saved my life 5 times over. And that's why I'm so concerned about it. I don't want people to have to worry about where they're going to get their health care. We shouldn't have to be going through this. Like, Canada should be working on expanding its healthcare to make it actually universal. Instead, we have conservative premiers doing everything they can to privatize it. And the federal government that should be looking out for us is doing nothing. They aren't doing their job. They're letting the provinces get away with it. They need to be, what's the term? Clamping down on it? They need to be doing their job. It's just so frustrating that it's getting to the extent that it's going, and people, they don't know until it's too late, until they need the services and suddenly they aren't there. Just quickly go over this article from BC. Alberta, Ontario, now BC. From the T again, BC leaves door open to clawbacks coming federal disability benefits. We'll get more into the disability benefit. Rates frozen in the budget leaves recipients far below the poverty line. So a lot of disability issues have to do with healthcare because not all people who are on disability gets everything covered. And if we did, then maybe a lot of people who are on disability wouldn't need to be on disability. If we could actually get the treatments and the resources and the equipment and the medical equipment that we need to recover from things, to help maintain symptoms, to do all that sort of stuff. But the thing is that we have this promised federal benefit for people living with disabilities that has been promised for 4 years. It's been voted on, it's been approved, but it still hasn't been enacted. And so since it's currently on the provinces to dispense disability benefits, which is why it's different depending on which province you're in, a lot of the provinces are very reluctant to raise those rates because it's like, oh, well, this federal disability benefit is coming soon, so we don't need to pay out yet. And it's so frustrating. So the BC government is waiting to see the details of a promised federal benefit for people with disabilities before deciding whether people receiving provincial disability payments will be allowed to keep the full amount. We want people to have as much money in their pockets as we can. No, they don't. No, they don't. Sheila, BC's Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, told the T, "We have been waiting for the details, so we will be analyzing how 2 benefit streams come together and take the advice of people we've been hearing who need all that support." I'm very concerned as to how this benefit will be rolled out, because not everyone who qualifies for the federal disability benefits or for provincial disability benefits qualify for federal disability benefits. And I'm worried that somebody like me won't qualify for this disability benefit relief program that's supposed to be coming into place, which will just leave me in dire poverty as opposed to just poverty. Parliament passed Bill C-22 to establish a federal disability benefit more than a year ago, and the Senate approved it last May, but the government has yet to say how much the benefit will pay or how they think it should interact with the provincial programs. The federal budget is scheduled for release April 16th, and the anti-poverty and disability groups have been advocating for including enough money to bring incomes for people receiving provincial disability benefits above the poverty line. In BC, a single person with disability receives just under $18,000 a year, plus about $1,700 in other provincial and federal credits and benefits. Depending on where a person lives, the province that leaves them about $5,000 short of the poverty line. Both the federal and provincial governments use the market basket measure from Statistics Canada. That's a bullshit measure. That's a bullshit measure. We don't need to get into the rest of this. I kind of get it, but let's just let's just click on the market basket measure. Market basket measure, MBM, threshold for a reference family by market basket region component base per year. So this is basically what they draw the poverty line at, like how much you need to be making in order to not be in poverty. And this is based on like, oh, well, if we buy all these things and this is how much it costs and all that sort of stuff. Just, And of course, it's the government that, controls this. And so they tend to say, well, not so many people are in poverty this year because they've adjusted this to make it sound like people aren't in poverty, whereas people are struggling a lot because rents keep on increasing. There's inflation, but then there's also added inflation, I guess you could say. Things that you didn't have to pay for before that you now have to pay for. So things like parking in apartment buildings. Sometimes it used to be free, but now you have to pay for it. Something as simple as recharging your laundry card used to be free, but now every time you put more money on your laundry card so that you can do laundry, it's 25 cents. Which isn't much, granted, but you start adding that up between everything else that you use, like it now costs you money to put money on a card. And it adds up. It really does adds up. So frustrating. But actually, speaking of the disability benefit, let's just skip over to this one. This is from Mike Morris. He's the Green MP, one of the better MPs that we have. Wish we had more like him in office. And he's been highly outspoken when it comes to people living with disabilities and the poverty that we endure. He's been on my channel. You should go check it out. I've interviewed him to talk about this sort of thing.
Mr. Speaker, thanks to the powerful advocacy of people with disabilities across the country, every MP in this House supported legislation meant to lift people with disabilities out of poverty. 9 months later, still no commitment from this government to fund what will be called the Canada Disability Benefit. When it came to MAID legislation, this government sure moved fast to make sure people with disabilities could die well. Will the Prime Minister show he's ready to ensure Canadians with disabilities live well?
So here you hear the Liberals going, oh, what are you saying? It's like, no, that's a very valid point. And the Liberals jeering at him right now, totally uncalled for. It has been extended, but people whose sole condition is mental health cannot apply for MAID at the moment. That's medical assistance in dying. That has been extended. However, people who are just living with disabilities can apply for medical assistance in dying. And many have. And many have done it because they can't get the supports that they need to live their life, to have a good quality of life. And so the government expanded MAID to include people with disabilities before enacting this benefit, which is just so gross. And that's part of my frustration with the expanding it to people whose sole condition is mental health issues, because mental health isn't covered under a universal health care. So we'll expand MAID, medical assistance in dying, to people with mental health issues before we actually expand the healthcare system to include them. And so people living with disabilities can apply for MAID while we're still waiting on the government to enact the disability relief benefit. And people have already used that program that would be alive today if they simply had the supports needed. Is the dire poverty that they're in, the lack of the ability to get the medication, the in-home care, the medical equipment, mobility devices, to be able to move to a place that's accessible to them. But because they couldn't get that, they've used MAID. And so here you have the Liberals jeering at Mike Morris for calling attention to that. Shame on them.
Well, that committed to a fully funded benefit by budget 2024.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member is better than that question that he just asked.
The member is better than you, Justin Trudeau. Such a fake, performative asshole. To say that he's to condescend to Mike Morris for making a very valid point. Shame on him. Just shame on Justin Trudeau.
He knows that it's really important to be there to both protect people when they're most vulnerable and be there to support their wishes. That is something that is foundational in Canada.
Yes, we'll be there when they're at their most vulnerable and to support their wishes when it comes to MAID. We'll be there for that.
In regards to people living with disabilities, we have invested more in people with disabilities over the past 8 years than ever before.
What he means are usually programs that they give money to corporations to try to make them more inclusive, to have a token person with disabilities have access to that job that maybe couldn't have had access before. It's all about getting people with disabilities back into the workforce. That's where they're spending their money, generally speaking, as opposed to realizing that a lot of people with disabilities aren't working because we can't. I cannot hold down a normal job. I'm doing this because this is what I'm capable of. And even this, I fluctuate on my ability of being able to do it. Hence why I have to cut back to just doing this 2 times a week for now. I can't hold down a normal job. I can't work with other people. My mental health, it not only is it detrimental to me, it's not helpful to the people I work with. They don't want me there either. I can guarantee you that. They don't want to be working with me either. But usually when he says that they're spending money, it's on programs like that that shovel out money to corporations. But people like me, I've seen no benefit from the federal government as of yet. My life has not improved as somebody living with disabilities because of the federal government. Nothing.
And there is more to do. We were very, very pleased to move forward on the Canada Disability Benefit, and we will have more to say in the coming months.
So we have a federal budget coming up in April. And that's when the government says, this is how we're going to be spending our money. Well, vote for it, blah, blah, blah. And the NDP will most likely vote for it so that it passes, so that there's not a vote of non-confidence and all that sort of stuff. If there isn't something in there about people with disabilities and actually enacting the disability benefit that has been voted on, approved, has gone through the Senate, is in law, if they don't do anything to actually enact it, the chances of it happening before the next federal election is nil. It won't happen. And if the Conservatives get into power, it won't happen. But part of it is Justin Trudeau just wants to keep it as a carrot on a stick for the next election to try to get people out to vote. And it's so gross because meanwhile, it's our lives that are being harmed by this, our quality of life that's being harmed by this, by their stupid political games. And you have this, spotted on the TTC, that's the Toronto Transit Commission, so the subway system in Toronto. I don't know if I can zoom in. I think the next one was a bit closer, the next image, or this one. Yeah. A modern private family clinic powered by nurse practitioners. Family health. Family practice. $450 per person annually, I think it says. Or is it? I don't know what it says there. Oh, no, that's per month. Or something per month. No, $50 per... It's a tiny sign. Anyway, that should not fucking exist in Canada. That should not be there. How nobody has, like, graffitied over this, tore this down, how people are not protesting the TTC for having this ad on the subways is beyond me. This is basically illegal in Canada, and the federal government, where are they? Where are they to be cracking down on this sort of thing? We should not have private clinics charging people in this country. We should be moving away from that. But Doug Ford is doing everything he can to privatize as much as he can. And people are just so asleep. They don't get it. They really don't. They don't understand the danger we're in. And I get so frustrated. Just screaming about this all the time, and people don't see it. But I have friends and family members who can't get the health care they need. Me, I can't get the health care I need. And so many people I see around me suffering from something that shouldn't be happening. You know, this is new. This wasn't like this when I was younger. We had far better health care when I was younger. More reliable health care. This is it, and we should have been working on expanding it back then, but instead, we're going to spend the next 20 years just to get it back to where it was 10 years ago if we start fighting back now. I just want to like take everyone in Ontario and shake them awake with this. It is so frustrating, and it's times like this where, you know, my channel that has such little reach, it bothers me that I can't seem to get a bigger platform to announce this, to get people aware of this. Because so many people are just not plugged into the news. They don't know this is happening, and they won't know until it's too late. Because then you have how Canada's family doctor shortage compares to other countries. Canada ranked last in just published list of 10 high-income countries when it comes to access to a family doctor for routine medical care. The proportion of Canadians age 18 and older who reported access to primary care provider fell from 93% to 2016 to 86% in 2023, according to a new survey by Commonwealth Fund, a private US-based research group released by Thursday. While 86% is still high, the report suggests an estimated 4 million Canadian adults do not have primary care provider in 2023. The survey ranked the following countries based on the percentages of people who report having a regular doctor or a place that they usually visit for medical care. Keep in mind, this is when you can get an appointment. So I have a family doctor, but getting an appointment sometimes can take months, you know, before I can actually see her. If you need to switch your family doctor for whatever reason, because you've moved out of town or something, you can't. So how accessible your family doctor is, we're looking at a lot less than that 86% in practicality. So while 86% might have a family doctor, it doesn't mean they have an accessible family doctor. So Netherlands, up at the top, New Zealand, the United Kingdom at 97%, Germany, Australia, Switzerland, France, Sweden, the United States is above Canada. How is the United States doing better at this than Canada? That's our bragging right there. You know, we always love to thumb our nose at the Americans and say, look at our healthcare system. Why are we allowing this to happen? I want to be able to hold this above Americans as long as possible. The CMWF average of the 10 countries is 93%. Canada's 2023 result is significantly lower than the CMWF average, according to the Commonwealth Fund. The survey was published by the Canadian Institute for Health Information. CIHI is an independent not-for-profit group providing information on health in Canada. Lack of access to primary care provider has been shown to negatively impact the health of individuals and the population as a whole, according to the report. Better access to primary health care can lead to better health outcomes and fewer emergency department visits and hospitalizations. The research suggests that lower income and younger Canadians, adults aged 18 to 34, and men in particular, were least likely to have a doctor. Of those, 2 in 5 respondents without a doctor said they had at least one chronic condition, and about a third took one or more prescription medications. So what that means, because I happen to have a family member in this situation, is that whenever she needs her medication renewed, she has to go to the hospital ER. She has to go to Emerge to get a doctor there to sign off on her medication every time she needs a renewal. And guess what that does? It clogs up the emergency rooms when you don't have a family doctor. And so for anything that you need to be seen, if you don't have walk-in clinics near you, because now even some walk-in clinics require an appointment, you go to Emerge. And so that just clogs up those systems. And then you wonder why wait times in Emerge are so long. In 2023, only 26% of Canadians polled said they were able to get same or next day appointments. This is down from 46% in 2016. So only 26%. And I've run into this where I've I need to see a doctor, but yeah, unless it's basically an emergency, like something I think I need to see the doctor or go to Emerge, they don't see you until whenever. Sometimes I get after-hour clinic times at my clinic, so I don't see my family doctor. I see the on-call doctor at the time. If it's something like, I need medication for this virus or something, it's ridiculous. But so many other conditions I've had to wait sometimes months just to see my family doctor on things that should have really started to been treated a long time ago. Because who knows what kind of detrimental health outlooks I have now because of that lack of care. So the 26% is significantly lower than the CMWF average of 42%. Only 23% of respondents said they found it easy to get care in the evenings, on weekends, and on holidays without going to the emergency department. The Commonwealth Fund interviewed 1,000 Canadian adults. Its results were supplemented by additional interviews by the Canadian Institute for Health Information for a combined total of 4,820 interviews completed across Canada. Interviews were conducted between March and blah, blah, blah. The results were weighed based on demographics by province. More information can be on the methodology is found there. What is this? Okay, I might cover that one in a different stream. Ooh, so frustrating. Let's check the Sandbox, and then we'll get on to the Doug Ford stuff that I wanted to cover with the budget. You see, I have so much more on my docket that I want to cover, but I'm like, if I wait till Sunday, then there'll be so much more that I cover, which is why I want to do a show 3 times a week, but 3 times a week is just too much. So I'll see if I can quickly go through this, because I know I'm bumping into the Letter Hacks show if I go past 8, and I don't want to do that. But on Tuesdays, there's other shows. On Thursdays, there are shows. There's so many shows all the time. And Letter Hack, Hogs, 3 nights a week anyway. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I'll try to get through as much as I can. Looney Tunes 9000. What? So Canada is saying people can die in an ER? Oh no, sometimes they're turned away from the ER to die on the street. I'm not joking. Had to Google that for a video I was doing once and found way too many stories than I was expecting. Let's see. Grand Theft Autobot, while anti-trans rhetoric is on the rise, Polyev is slated to win the PM position. My spouse may need to move to escape as they are non-binary and may get targeted, and we have no money to move. There's really nowhere to move, because even with Polyev in power, we're still better off here than in the States. So, unfortunately, it's just a matter of trying to find a safer community, but even a community like mine that is safe doesn't mean it's always safe. It's, yeah. As Looney Tunes 9000 says, oh, Sandy, it's way worse in the States. You don't want to be here. Yeah, I know. I don't want to be in the States for pretty much anything. It's worse with healthcare, for LGBTQ plus issues, for me just living my life, trying to get an apartment, because even though our housing crisis is worse, I still think, you know, the hoops and stuff, like especially Emma, when she talks about it on the Majority Report, that you have to get some sort of broker in order to even rent an apartment, although I haven't tried to do that in a while, so I don't know how bad it is here. There is no incentive for me to move to the United States. Like, unless I met the person of my dreams who I wanted to be with, and it's easier for me to move than a lot of people because I'm not attached to, I don't have much family here, friends I have, but you know, I can see them frequently and still communicate online. My job is at home, so it's easier for me to move. So if I met the person of my dreams and wanted to move in with them and they were in the United States, that's pretty much the only reason why I had to go down there. And then there'd be a lot of, we have to still live close to the border, so if I have a medical emergency, I just drive my ass over. Atticus Among Us, I broke my back years ago when I was in between jobs and didn't have health insurance. The debt took me longer to recover than the injury. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I think I missed something in stream or in the Sandbox. I mentioned Emma, and now people are saying Sam Cedar is king. All hail Sam Cedar. But I mentioned Emma. Emma is queen. All hail Emma. Sam Cedars, he's all right. I want to see about calling in to the show to just congratulate them on the 20 years and stuff, and just give my story as to how Majority Report has changed my life. Tried calling in today, didn't get through. Might just try sending in an IM. Okay, I'll try to quickly go through this Doug Ford stuff, because I have like all this information kind of laid out about it, but it gets pretty redundant after a few tweets, messages, and stuff. So let's go back here. So from T. Resident, who, if you're in Ontario and want to keep up to date with what's happening with Doug Ford, wonderful Twitter account to follow. The debt was around 300 billion when former party leader Tim Hudak posted this. Thanks to Doug Ford, the debt will soon be 450 billion. I have seen zero reporting from any media outlets on Ford's debt binge. Yes. Almost $500 billion. So formerly from Tim Hudak, and this is from 2016, just saying our crushing level of debt is the single greatest threat to Ontario's future prosperity. Over and over and over again, the Conservatives are like, the debt. Oh no, the Liberals, the NDP will put us into debt. And over and over and over again, it's the Conservatives that do it the most. And yet people still fall for it. I don't understand how people still fall for it with Conservatives. When they hear that the Conservatives are going to cut their taxes, but then they never do. In fact, taxes go up because the Conservatives will cut other programs forcing municipalities to raise taxes. But always they run on this. Like right now, it's the carbon tax that the federal Conservative Party is running on. Oh no, the carbon tax and stuff. But they're the most responsible ones for increasing deficits and debts and, you know, not helping with taxes. It's just, I don't get how people continuously fall for this. So from Robert Benzie, breaking, the ink is red and the Tories are blue. Amid a rapidly slowing economy, Finance Minister P. Benthel has tabled a record 214 billion budget with 9.8 billion deficit for 2024 to 25, a staggering 10 billion swing from the 200 million surplus he projected last March. And from Colin DeMello, in case you missed it, after years of griping about Liberal spending, the Ford government tabled a tax and spent budget deficit larger than Kathleen Wynne's in 2018. Here's how the 2024 budget shaped up, and let's listen to this.
For the second largest government in Canada, there are signs of trouble ahead. The Ford government tabled its 2024 budget, a $214 billion spending plan, one that comes with continuing concern.
We're not immune from global forces slowing down our economy. These higher interest rates, high inflation are having their impact.
The impact of a projected slowdown is immediate. Instead of balancing the books like the government hoped 1 year ago, the province will post a whopping $9.8 billion deficit, a trend that continues until 2026, when the province is expected to reach balance just before the next election.
That's not going to happen. You know, it's always that promise just before the next election. You know, again, that whole carrot on a stick thing. Trying to convince people that this was the plan all along, but I guarantee you this was not the plan. Or it was the plan. It's just not the plan that they promised the people, but it was the plan the Conservative government always wanted. But this isn't going to happen. Not with everything that Doug Ford has cut, you know, because there's all these things where he's cut. So it sounds good on paper, like we no longer have to be charged to renew our license and things of that sort. But that was revenue to the province that's gone. You know, he's privatizing things that used to bring money to the government. Again, that's revenue that's gone. And so then he does all this and then he makes all these cuts and stuff. And yeah, it's just an absolute mess.
So we had a choice to make. We could pass on cost to taxpayers, but we're not going to do that.
Oh, they absolutely did that.
Despite turbulent times, the budget has billions in new spending. The province will spend $500 million to help 600,000 people gain access to primary care health teams, which are seen as key to reducing the burden on emergency rooms. Another $700 million for healthcare staffing, including training, accreditation, and nursing programs. And $120 million for additional treatment beds, mobile mental health clinics, and crisis response teams.
Now that might sound good, but we were going to pause that video right there because context matters. Those sound like big numbers. But they neglected to mention this. Is it on this one? Breaking. The Ford government tables a record spending budget with a deficit ballooning to $9.8 billion. There are no new affordability measures beyond what's been announced. Healthcare spending is growing 1.3 below inflation. There is money for infrastructure and highway and then for helicopters, blah, blah, blah. There's no tax hikes. Yeah, there's 46 million for police helicopters for Toronto and Durham. For highways, money for that. So those healthcare numbers sound big and sound good, but it's actually below inflation. So in other words, that's a healthcare spending cut that's happening that Global News neglected to mention in this little video.
And $2 billion for home care.
A big chunk of this money is going to supporting the wages and recruiting and retaining more healthcare workers so they can take care of people where they want to be taken care of.
From healthcare to housing, another key priority for the Ford government. This budget will allow municipalities across the province to levy a vacant home tax, a power that was only given to Toronto, Ottawa, and Hamilton so far. And the province is painting a somewhat rosy picture of new housing construction, projecting 274,000 new housing starts over the next 3 years. That seems...
They're not saying what kind of housing they're building, though. Because if you're building homes that are unaffordable, it's not going to help the housing crisis. And sometimes what they define as a home can sometimes be a long-term care bed. These numbers and projections, they're always very misleading. That's why I like to see the results. You know, I won't believe it until the homes are built and they're affordable. And that's not what the Conservative government will do.
Seems like a lot, but it falls short of the province's own goal of 350,000 housing starts over the same period. Premier Doug Ford's Bonnie Crombie battle also seems to have a price tag. Expanding the Huron-Ontario LRT in Brampton and Mississauga, as well as creating a new GO train line to Milton, have increased the transit infrastructure budget by $3 billion. Both projects viewed as politically driven.
So Bonnie Crombie is the newly elected leader of the Ontario Liberal Party.
Stamp out Crombie's chances in the 905. Despite the new cash, the government is still facing criticism. There are no new affordability measures. The education budget is growing slightly, and funding for post-secondary institutions are decreasing.
The message that the Conservatives sent today is that what matters most to people right now, accessible health care, affordable housing, the cost of living, don't matter to them.
Overall, it's a document designed to navigate choppy economic waters while keeping the government's political ship afloat.
Just a little side note, again, my frustration with the media. You probably didn't notice this. I noticed this. And it bugs me so much when this happens. If we go back, where was it? Here?
The province is painting a somewhat rosy picture of new housing starts over the next 3 years. That seems like a lot, but it falls short of the province's own goal of 350,000 housing starts over the same period. Premier Doug Ford's Bonnie Crombie battle also...
Premier Doug Ford's Bonnie Crombie battles. Bonnie Crombie, the leader of the Ontario Liberals. And then you also see her, where was it? Pictured here, Bonnie Crombie. Ontario's next premier here, and she was speaking. But then the video also brought attention to this.
Post-secondary institutions are decreasing.
The message that the Conservatives sent today is that what matters most to people right now.
They didn't bother to mention who she is. The leader of the Ontario NDP. Merritt Stiles, they didn't mention her name or the battle that she's going to have with Doug Ford, even though they're the official opposition. The media does this over and over again when it comes to the NDP. Like, I have my gripes with the NDP, don't get me wrong there. But so often, the media will focus on what the Liberals and the Conservatives are doing and then just completely ignore the NDP. So this little clip here didn't mention her by name or party, and they don't even have that on screen anywhere. But for Bonnie Crumby, newly elected leader of the Ontario Liberals, well, that was there for her. Again, it's a very subtle media bias, but it's there all the time. You'll constantly hear in the articles and stuff how the Liberal person was pushing back against the Conservatives on blank, blank, and blank, while completely ignoring what the NDP was saying and doing, even though the NDP is the official opposition right now. And this is a big problem come election season when the NDP is just completely ignored for the most part. This is my little side gripe on that. From T-Dot resident, again, just to show, like, we have the budgets coming up, the deficit in Ontario with all the spending that Doug Ford is doing, but how is the cost of living going for people? So T-Dot resident quote tweeted this, mocking clearly the April 1st carbon tax change of 3 cents a liter on gas did this because, again, federal's conservative is like, the carbon tax, 3 cents a liter on gas. Do I like that? No. Is that the be-all and end-all of affordability? Not even close. There's so many other things, but let's just go here. I thought this was a typo, says the Daily Hive Toronto. Canadians startled by a $45 fruit and veggie trays at Metro. And then they wonder why people living with disabilities and poverty can't eat healthy food to help keep them healthy. Wrong way, that way. If you're thinking of picking up a pre-cut fruit and veggie tray for your guests, you might want to consider buying some produce and making your own platter. Now, I know there's a lot of people that say like, oh, you can make your own platter. It's cheaper that way. You can do this and that. And I get it. And for the most part, yes. That doesn't excuse this price. Like, yes, there's going to be some people who don't have the time or the, physical ability to do the chopping and all that sort of stuff. I get that. And so these trays become very convenient for them, but that's just a very, very tiny percent of the population. The vast majority of people can just make their own fruit and veggie tray. That doesn't excuse the price. It just doesn't. It should not be this much. Am I crazy to think this is literally so expensive? She asks. So this is a TikTok that is now not showing up here. That was showing up earlier, but there's some weird things going on with the internet right now. New or lower price, reads the sticker, on a waterlogged display shelf. One 2.7 kilogram veggie tray includes grape tomatoes, cauliflower, celery sticks, baby carrots, and sliced cucumbers. I've never been able to eat these baby carrots anymore. Ever since I learned from somebody who works in the industry how they're preserved. Because you notice when they get a little bit old and a little bit dried out, they kind of turn white. That's because they're being bleached. And I haven't been able to eat them since. But also the flavor isn't there much either. So there's other little types of carrots that you can get. But yeah. $45 for this, $45 for this, and no one eats the freaking cantaloupe and honeydew melon. You should just get rid of that, put blueberries and raspberries in that instead. And as people are pointing out, that doesn't even include dip. There's no dips in these. There's nothing. There's no dip. No dip. But you're looking at, after taxes, $100 for those 2 trays. after taxes. And also in Northern Ontario, you have the same type of issue, only worse, as always, because the cost of living in Northern Ontario is exponentially worse. So Salmamakwa says food prices in Northern Ontario keep rising. First Nations are a big business, but companies should not profit while we struggle trying to live a good life. It's time for nations to work together. And so for this much smaller tray, it's $30. So if we go back to here, trying to see if I can get a zoom in on the picture. Did this one show the picture? I'm trying to see how much it is per kilogram. I guess I can do the math, but that requires work. And I don't math. Because this one you can see that it is $43.99 per kilogram. Wow. Oh, okay, so then this one was what? 3 point something? So yeah, multiply that by so multiply this 43 by 3 to get the price if that was the same size. Wow. And I miss having like nice fruits and veggies that I could enjoy. I can't imagine how they manage up in northern communities and First Nation communities. It's just blows my mind. And then people will get on my case about my diet or that I'm not eating healthy. Well, not just me, but people in general who live with poverty, that we aren't doing enough to keep our own health in check. It's like, we can't afford healthy food. You know, after this, I'm going to eat crap because that's the only thing I can afford to eat. You know, I want to work out more and build muscle. That requires a fair bit of protein that I don't have money for. Like, it's just, let's check the Sandbox. And then I wanted to get to a couple cop stories. And then we can call it a day, I think. Even though there's still a lot of other stuff I wanted to get to, but save it for Sunday. So check the Sandbox. I've sighed. Sam is king, but Emma is a goddess. Okay, okay. Got it. You got it there. Emma Majority Report. Looney Tunes 9000, 20 years since Majority Report first aired? Sort of. It's been 20 years since Air America started, which was the predecessor to the Majority Report. But it was because of Air America that led into this, so they're doing a special this Friday with Mark Marone will be there, but I can't remember her name off the top of my head. She's did Air America with Sam Cedar way back when. She'll be on the show on Friday. And so not just this week, but a whole bunch of weeks and stuff. They're going to be celebrating their 20th anniversary. There's going to be merch coming out. All that sort of fun stuff. Yeah, Sam's been at it for almost half his life. Looney Tunes 9000. People fall for it because they're too damn stupid. They're misled. A lot of them are desperate. They're lied to. They're manipulated. There is some aspect of not informing themselves, not reading into it. But personally, I see a lot of people who vote for these conservatives, not all of them, but a lot of them are victims of the same system that we're all victims of. And they've just been lied to, manipulated, and... But then there's also the people who are just racist and homophobic and queerphobic and authoritarian, and it's a wide mix. It's not one thing. It's not a monolith. So But there's a lot of people not being educated on what's really happening in the province and just believe whatever they told because they're in the camp of the Conservatives. Nina, Canadian privatization decisions should be a forefront of government news coverage. Yeah, it should be. Should be. Nina, Canadian, it's not affordable housing. No, all the housing that Doug Ford is promising, especially like the ones that he plans on building over the Greenbelt, they're not affordable. Like they're big monstrosity houses. And there's all these bylaws trying to be put in place for fourplexes. So like 2-story, four, like a cube. Cities don't want them to be zoned in their areas, and there's all this uproar about them, as opposed to it being, no, that's a good idea. Like, we need to build more up instead of out, more infill, more rezoning, taking old properties, maybe that are just old factories and warehouses, and converting them into housing and different types of housing, affordable housing. Like, there's so much that can be done within the city limits that they're not doing. Instead, they want to branch out and cover over, precious land. Nina, Canadian, great point, Sandy. They don't credit names equally. They do not. And I used to be a lot more involved with the NDP, so I was well aware of it then. And it rubs me the wrong way when I see it still happening, even though the NDP is the official opposition and they still get treated this way. And come election time, like even the last election, it was always Del Duca, which I think sounds like a Sith Lord name, if you ask me, the leader of the Liberals back then. It was his opinion, his take, this and that and the other thing that the media was covering when it came up to Doug Ford, but rarely ever were they talking to the NDP. So frustrating. But I definitely have my gripes about the NDP, no doubt about that. Nina, Canadian, groceries are so expensive. That's a giant problem, not carbon tax problem. Yeah, it's just the Conservatives latch on to this carbon tax because it's a good buzz phrase for them. But there's so many other things that are making life difficult that should be addressed, that have a far, far greater impact on the average person than the carbon tax. Okay, I just wanted to go over, there's 2 cop stories. How are we for time? Okay, I'll just quickly go over these and then we'll start wrapping it up. Charges dropped against Ontario cops in shooting death of toddler. I remember this story from a long, long time ago. This happened a while ago. And it was just so devastating. And the amount of coverage it got in Canadian media was so teeny tiny. So even here you see CBC, so you think national news, but then you gotta read this. It's Toronto. So this is a local news story. So you're not going to see this on national news. And when this story first broke years ago, when the shooting happened, you had to know it existed and search for it. And it was so obscure to find this news story. And it's quite devastating. So just a warning going into this. All criminal charges have been dropped against 3 Ontario Provincial Police OPP officers who were accused in a deadly 2020 police shooting that killed a father and toddler in Kawartha Lakes, Ontario. Yeah, a baby. A baby was killed by the police in this. An armed person abducted his child on November 26, 2020 in a Toyota. And they went on a high-speed chase. Father and 18-month-old Jameson. The responding officers fired a barrage of 45 shots at the truck when it finally came to a halt after colliding with an OPP vehicle, court heard Monday. Jameson was killed at the scene. His father was taken to a hospital where he died on December 2nd, less than a week later. 3 OPP constables faced 1 count each of manslaughter, reckless discharge of a firearm with intent, and aggravated assault in relation to the boy's death. But the Crown withdrew those charges in Oshawa court on Monday. The decision came after a preliminary hearing into the high-profile shooting came to a close. In total, 12 witnesses were called by the Crown from December 15, 2023 until January 8th this year. Who do you think those witnesses were? They were all cops. All the witnesses were within the law enforcement. And we'll get to that. The 3 officers were also initially each charged with 1 count criminal negligence causing death, but the charge was previously dropped as it was found redundant. Crown Attorney Ian Blummer said to the packed courtroom, "What happened on that day was terrible, dangerous, and traumatic event for everyone involved." Blummer said the Crown had no evidence to disprove the officers' versions of events that they fired their weapons in self-defense. Therefore, there was no reasonable prospect of conviction in the case. That there is the crux of it. There was no evidence to disprove what the officers said happened. There's no webcam, body cam, no other witnesses from civilians. So there's nothing to disprove that these cops who randomly shot, well, not randomly, but shot multiple bullets into a car, knowing that this man had kidnapped his baby. They knew this, and they still wildly shot into this car. After the person who they were chasing appeared to be suicidal, he had a gun, but he was pointing the gun at himself. So he was a threat to himself and his baby. And so the cops shot him and his baby. The Crown's decision was based on information contained within the officer's notes. Blummer says the officers made the notes independently prior to consulting lawyers and before their exposure to any evidence in the case, including radio communication, other witnesses' statements. The officers had not previously released blah, blah, blah. During his address to the court, Blummer said that Jameson sustained 4 gunshot wounds, including a wound to the back and the base of the skull, which rapidly caused his death. Both father and son were in the driver's seat of the car at the time of the shooting. The Crown said no evidence suggests the officers ought to have anticipated Jameson was seated in his father's lap. He added, so they just shot into this car without confirming where the baby was, that they knew was in there. They just shot in there without confirming where that baby was, even though, again, this person was not threatening to shoot the police. He was threatening to shoot himself. So one of the cops fired a total of 25 shots, and there are 17. The officers did not engage in a panic, haphazard discharge of their firearms, Blummer said, as they were all aimed and directed towards the driver. So they were just shooting at the driver without, again, confirming where the baby was. And, oh, it's not... You shoot 25 shots into a car and it's not panic or haphazard? Are you kidding me? You did not engage in a panic and haphazard discharge with 25 shots. How is that not panic and haphazard? Because if it wasn't panic and it wasn't haphazard, then 2 shots at the person directly that you've confirmed is there and you know that the baby isn't in his lap. And also, why are you shooting at him? Yes, he had a gun. But he wasn't threatening them with the gun. He was threatening himself and his baby with the gun. During the preliminary hearing, court heard that the police responded to reports of a child who had been abducted from his mother at the family's home. Officers followed the truck trying to intercept it along Pigeon Lake Road and eventually guiding it towards a spike belt with the driver, maintaining about 170 kilometers per hour, which is almost double the highway speed limit. The Crown said that the cops saw Shapiro pointing a handgun at his own head. See? He was pointing a handgun at his own head while speeding before colliding with an OPP vehicle who had been deployed spike belt to deflate the truck tires, was left with critical injuries as a result. The cop who deployed that spike belt and had his vehicle hit. I wonder why the other cops were upset then. When the cop went to the truck, he saw Shapiro's gun still in hand. The Crown said he gave multiple commands to get the armed father to drop his weapon and show his hands, to which Shapiro responded with, "Fuck you," each time. Prior to opening fire, the cops sought confirmation from dispatch about whether the abducted child was in the truck at the time, but not all officers involved in the dispatch call were made aware that the toddler was confirmed to be in the truck, Bloomer noted. So, again, they knew that this was a child abduction case. They knew there was a strong possibility that this child was in this car with this guy. And instead, they didn't wait to confirm. They didn't wait. They didn't look. They just shot into this car. Leading up to the collision, the officers knew that he had abducted his child and was armed, making suicidal gestures and driving at incredibly high speeds. The Crown said that he had also made a sharp turn, resulting in the catastrophically violent collision that injured the other cop. Taken with Shapiro's unwillingness to drop his firearm, the collision supported the officer's concern that he was prepared to grievously injure or kill responding police officers. The Crown said, no, they were just shooting him out of vengeance, out of anger, out of frustration, that he collided into the other cop's car. Yeah, they knew he was suicidal. Therefore, he'd be unwilling to drop his arm. And also, he had his kid as a hostage. It is clear that he is the person most responsible for the events that occurred that day. Yeah, of course. But, you know, the police panically and haphazardly shooting into the vehicle also had a lot to do with them dying. Bloomer said the evidence gathered established that Jamison died as a result of at least one police-fired bullet. However, the toddler's death was a tragic, unintended consequence of the shots fired by the defendants in a genuine situation of self-defense, he said. Just remember how tragic this story was when I first heard it, and to think that now all the cops involved are just, yeah, it was self-defense. We'll just let them off. Baby died. They shot a baby. And this wasn't national news. This is not the country people seem to think it is. And we have this. Women shot by police after fleeing traffic stop, SIU says. 25-year-old taken to hospital in critical condition. Ontario police watchdogs say a 25-year-old woman has been injured in a police-involved shooting Friday afternoon in Westboro after fleeing a traffic stop. And this is recent, March 22nd. So, in a social media post Friday afternoon, the Ottawa Police Service said the shooting happened around 1:30 p.m. Ottawa paramedics told CBC a woman was shot and taken to hospital in critical condition. What are we paying these people for? All of our police budgets are just so ballooned way out of proportion. They get so much money. They get paid so much. And this is what they do. In a news release Friday evening, Ontario Special Investigation Unit, SIU, said an officer conducted a traffic stop near Churchill and Avondale Avenues. According to the SIU's preliminary information, the woman got out of the vehicle and ran away. and police chased after her. At some point, the officer discharged his firearm. The woman was struck, reads the news release. The SIU investigates incidents involving police where there's been death or serious injury. Rodrigo, who lives near the scene of the shooting, said he and his wife heard sounds like 3 gunshots, but weren't expecting that it could be real gunshots. Several nearby residents, including Rodrigo, told CBC News that they witnessed a swarm of police officers and vehicles at the scene. The area where the shooting took place was close to traffic, but police say Saturday after morning that it has since reopened. So why did she have a weapon? Was she threatening to kill herself, so they thought that they would do it for her? Is that the situation? Like, why did she suddenly become a threat as she was running away? We hear about these stories all the time in the United States without realizing that Canada is the second worst of, countries within our categories when it comes to police shootings. She was fleeing a traffic stop and they shot her. But, in Toronto, it's over $1 billion for their police budget. In Ottawa, I imagine it's hundreds of millions. Absolutely disgusting. I need to see my happy picture. Where is it? Do I have it up here? Yes, this is a tweet that I adore it on a level that is just, what's the word? When I have an unreasonable love for something. Irrational. I just have an irrational love for this tweet. It makes me happy, so I need to see it right now. And because I need to see it right now, all of you get to see it right now. This person tweeting out a picture of this mountain saying California has the most iconic mountain at Galore 48. Meet Mount Shasta, 14K of pure glory with the Mount St. Helens Twitter account. Tweeting out, looks like a little bitch to me. I don't know why, but I love this to the point that I'm going to be printing it off and putting it on my wall. I have a complete and utter irrational love for this tweet. Just love this so hard. It's like the best tweet I've ever seen. It could, like, I like, natural disasters, physical geography. It's my special interest. Seeing this just brings me irrational amounts of joy and happiness, and I need to see it right now. Oh. Grand Theft Autobot, this is really making me think twice about calling police if I need help. They're likely to make things worse. Yes. A lot of people who are shot by the police are in mental distress at the time. Which is why my friends know not to call the police if I'm having a mental episode. Okay, let's check the Sandbox. Let's unwind a little. See if I can get one of my kitties in here. And then I'll push all of you off to Letterhack. He has a couple shows. Like, not only does he hog 3 nights a week, but he does like 2 to 3 shows tonight. Looney Tunes 9000. Sandy still needs your help paying off Frodo's vet bills. To help, please visit PayPal. And if you're Canadian, you can do an e-transfer to SandeeLovas@gmail.com. Yes. He has been, again, he's still been eating. He's still snuggly. He still runs away from me during the day, though, because of the medication I have to give him daily. But he's playing with his brothers. He's playing in the evening. And at nighttime, when it's just me and him in the bedroom, he's his old snuggly self, and I get my bedtime and morning cuddles with him. So as frustrating and as much as I hate giving him the medication because I literally have to chase him around the apartment to do it, it's working, and he means the world to me, but it is an ongoing medical expense. So any help with that, greatly appreciated. PayPal, link in the description box, or Canadians can do an e-transfer, and that way nothing is deducted. Spending money on what? Cars, strip clubs, and personal needs? Was that about the police or Doug Ford or... Well, I saw something recently and I was thinking of adding it. The police playing with a drone, a drone camera or whatever. I was thinking of adding it because, you know, they get paid so much and you have 4 police officers just out on the corner playing with this. But they need it for surveillance and things of that sort. And I'm like, I can see how it'd be useful. I've seen them, like at the scene of an accident or something, they sometimes use them to get up above so that they can do a survey of the whole area and whatnot. I'm not against the police having drones for certain reasons, but, you know, to see 4 of them playing with it is just, when you know things like this happen, the shootings like this happen, it's just so frustrating. And they get paid so much. So much. Like 2 cops that I featured in my last live stream, where they were demoted for breaking the law and threatening and doing horrible things. And they were demoted. And their demotions for, like, whatever amount was still more than I get a year on disability. And they still made over $100,000 a year. It's gross. Gross. Atticus Among Us, my doctor's office called me to schedule my annual appointment, but was encouraging a video visit. What the fuck? No testing, vitals, or anything. Told them I was planning on changing PCP's fed up system. Yeah. I need to call my doctor about some stuff. Teddy, cool. I'm hyped for the letter hack tonight. Yeah. I try to get caught up on it when I can, but after I'm done a live stream, I don't want to do anything. I just want to unwind and watching more political or semi-related political lefty content. Not high on my agenda. Oh, did I scroll up? I think I scrolled up way too high and I was reading older messages or something. I don't know. Yeah, I scrolled up way high. Okay. Nina Canadian, appreciate you all. Thanks for igniting my opinions of importance. I appreciate you, Nina Canadian. Grand Theft Autobot, so they opened fire without the suspect firing first. Shame. Yeah. Suspect didn't fire, but he hit the other car because of spike strips. And I'm curious, but again, we don't know if those spike strips led to him colliding into the car that caused the one officer to be injured. I get the feeling they were just firing because they were mad at him and they didn't care, and because of it a baby died. Okay, let's see if I can get a baby in here. Abernathy. Abernathy. See, Atticus Among Us was laughing at me last time because I was mentioning how Abernathy is a really big handful. Climbing up the walls, getting the push pins and stuff. In 1 week, he chewed through the cord of my ring light, my electric blanket, my phone charger, almost through the cord to my webcam and box lights. I have a friend who's trying to repair the ring light and the electric blanket. If not, that's like $100 gone. It's the phone cords just have to get replaced because so that's money there. If he had chewed through the box lights and the webcam cord, that's a few $100s worth of equipment there. I got the spray now. I've sprayed everything with the spray from the pet store. I think just as an extra precaution for the more sensitive things, I'm going to be wrapping them in tinfoil, then spraying them again. I'm at my wit's end with that cat. But he's a darling when he's not being absolutely destructive. I don't know if I can afford him. Abernathy, come here. Lanier? Lanier? They're probably sleeping on the new love seat I got because it's super comfy and cushy, and they love it on there, which is good. Yeah, I got a new love seat. Found it for $50 at the thrift store in the mall, and it is everything I want in a love seat. Squishy, there's enough room to cuddle on there should the day ever come that I happen to get into a relationship again and want somebody near me that I can cuddle with. Seems a little far-fetched, but, you know, I like to think big. Normally they come at this point. Frodo. Abernathy. Lanier. Come here, sweeties. They're usually better at coming when I call them. Abernathy, I have a cord in here for you to chew. I'm going to go see where they're at and grab one for you. Here we go. He's like, why are you waking me up? I was on the love seat, all cushy and cuddly and sleepy. With all the pain you caused me, the least you can do is look in the camera for people. He is a beautiful cat. Oh. And he loves the new love seat and was too busy just sleeping on there to come when I called him. Come, look up here. Look up here. Oh, there we go. Look over here. There we go. Look at that beautiful pattern right under his chin. If I get him to look up. Look up. Go on, let everyone see this beautiful pattern under your chin. He's a Bengal mix, which makes him such a handful. Okay. Lanier. Lanier, come here. Normally Lanier would come if he knows that Abernathy's getting cuddles without him. But Lanier is also sleeping on the love seat and is just more than happy to stay there. There we go. Ah. Okay. So my next live stream will be on Sunday at 6 p.m. I'm trying to see if I can get somebody to join me for it. It's hard to say. So tune in for that. Still lots to cover in Canadian shenanigans. I'm going to try to call into the Majority Report on Friday if they open phone lines, or send in an IM just to thank them for their 20th anniversary. Sam Cedar's 20th anniversary of kind of starting his show. It started with Air America 20 years ago and then morphed into the Majority Report as we know it a few years later. People can go check out an old YouTube page to see some of his old content. Let's see. I have it on here. When I had COVID a couple years ago, I watched all the videos. I binge watched all the videos on this. Break Room Live. Just some of his shenanigans and stuff that he got up to, little bits and whatnot. They're all short. But when I had COVID the one time, I binge watched pretty much everything on here. You get to see Sam when he was in his early 40s. In one of these videos, he talks in great detail about a colonoscopy he's about to get. You can even see him shirtless in one of these because he was in a diet challenge with Mark. Just some of the weirdness that they got up to. He just seems so young in these, like so young. Then there's also this one, Marilyn V. Cedar, that has, again, some old videos that you can go and find, and little survival Sam bits and whatnot. Puppet plays and stuff. Mila Cedar when she was like 2. Somebody mentioned it on the show today. I am the show talking about it, so that's why I was thinking about it. Plus the 20th anniversary. It's like, wow, he has come a long way since then. Talking about Twitter back when he only had like 100 or so people. Mudbutts, people are overrated. Yes. I would love to start a Majority Report Canadian version, but that requires me working with people. I'll have to get over it, but yeah. So if you can, please become a patron. You can message the show, LeftoftheBox@gmail.com. Eventually I'll read it. I have emails in there I need to get to. Okay, I'm really bad at emails. It's not a great way to get in touch with me. I'm so bad at it. Twitter is usually probably the best way to get my attention. You can also check out my art. I still need to get my new pictures uploaded and start working on my new pictures that I want to do. Got a lot on the go. But I appreciate you all. Thank you so much to the mods for keeping the sandbox clean of turds. Thank you so much to the people who've already become patrons and have helped me out through donations to Frodo's vet bills, to getting things off my Amazon wish list, which is also linked below. All the Easter stuff is on there for a limited time. Easter is my favorite candy holiday, so I have a lot of chocolate on there right now. So if that's within your budget and you want to share the joy of chocolate, by all means. There's also things to help with my studio, a new ring light. all that sort of stuff. Art supplies, cat supplies. But lots of chocolate. Chocolate is always a good go-to. And yeah, with that, everyone head over to the Letter Hack. They occasionally open lines on Fridays, Looney Tunes. Very rarely. I'm not expecting it this Friday, though, so I'll send in an IM. Anyway, with all of that, salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.